Good morning. It's X Winterview, back again with another brief dialogue for his dear friend Annastacey. A little bit of a hiatus there on the brief dialogues. Thought I would... I don't know what I thought. I don't even know if I was thinking. Probably wasn't. This brief dialogue is on the suffering of the person. I think I've done a dialogue on this before, but it's a good topic because suffering is so ever present, so part of human life. Big suffering, little suffering, and so on and so forth. And one of the most FAQ'd is, how can I stop suffering? When will I stop suffering? Am I suffering? What is suffering? And all those kinds of questions. So I thought I would take a little stroll down the cul-de-sac. Maybe it's an avenue. Probably an avenue. Maybe a boulevard. Suffering. The boulevard of broken dreams. I like that. So, the person that we imagine ourselves to be is the recipient, the apparent recipient of suffering. To define it briefly, I think I've defined this before, but why not? Let's define it again. This is just my definition, of course, because it's mine, it's 100% correct without any shadow of a doubt. And any other definition is totally incorrect. I rest my case. No, I'm just, again, being facetious, being a little bit playful. Definitions are completely arbitrary, but they give the conversation a framework, or a starting point at least. If I define it a certain way, I can at least talk about it from a certain perspective. But, you could define it many ways, and I believe other authors on this subject have defined it in other ways. So, caveats aside, let's press on. Suffering is the experience of the apparent person after what I might call pain. Pain is the initial trigger, the stimulus, the event, whatever you want to frame it, to precipitate the suffering process. The human animal is unique in this arena because of, you might say, the imagination, the fantasies, etc. And the imagination and fantasies of particular note are fantasies of past and future with what I would like to have happen for me. What I imagine for me. And to give a little bit more data or a few more details on this, I'm going to use the framework of meaning and purpose. Now, this is an incredibly big arena, so I'm going to try and give it a very rudimentary working definition for this dialogue. The way it works is this. The mind, which exists or is, you could even say, cause and effect, time and space, objects and subject, stuff within the space, etc., is one of the behaviors of the mind is to presume a cause. I've said this many times. The mind always presumes a cause. The mind doesn't like to philosophize particularly about the problematic nature of defining causes. You know, where's the first cause? What was the original cause? Is a bit of a big thought, too big a thought for the mind, so it just keeps it simple. Keeps it nice and simple. Person punches me, they caused my pain. They deserve punishment, retribution. Nice and simple. So, if, this is where it gets a little bit technical, but if there is a cause, reasons the mind, if there's a cause, then it gets into this funny domain of utility and purpose. The mind imagines that things, like everything it can conceive of, has some utility, some purpose, some reason. And this also ties into the greater subject of logical positivism, materialism, etc. If you want to get your teeth into those philosophies, philosophical positions. So if something has a cause and something has a reason for its existence, let's say the trees and the plants, the reason for their existence is to give oxygen and take in carbon dioxide, I think. Then, you know, that's their purpose. And then, therefore, if everything has a reason and purpose, we can investigate the world to discover the reason and purpose for everything's existence. The insect has camouflage to protect it from the predator. The predator has keen eyesight in order to find the insect, and so on and so forth. Where it gets a bit tricky, mind gets a little bit muddled, you could say, is when it applies the same principle to the self, the person, me, I. If I exist, reasons the mind, and the mind naturally presumes it does exist, and the reason it presumes it exists is because it has to attribute cause to consciousness, say, or the body. It reasons that there must be a person who is the cause, as in I'm the cause of that. And also behaviour. I'm the cause of my behaviour. The added layer of muddledom is a new word I just made up. Muddledness is that it tries to also fit the model of reason and purpose to the person. If I exist, goes the mind, then there must be a reason and a purpose for my existence, because nature never makes mistakes. Nature is this big machine and everything plays a role, blah blah blah. You know, that kind of giant mechanistic model of existence. Very, very prevalent still. So therefore, moving along from that, if I have a reason and purpose for my individual existence, which I presume is valid, then my life is now measured with respect to how near to or further from or far from or away from my purpose, my goal, my dream I am. Is this starting to fall into place now, how this is going to create a lot of suffering? Yeah, I can bet you can see it already. But I'll press on. Oh, why do people do that? Oh, sorry, listener. I'm giving you a description of my driving woe. Move over. Let me past. There we go. Okay. Sorry, a little sideline there of my misery, my suffering. See that suffering? Right there. We had real life suffering in a dialogue about suffering. So where was I? Oh yeah. So now I exist. I'm a person. I'm in the body, or I am the body, and there's some reason for my existence, some purpose. Now, this often starts to arise in adolescence. I'm just throwing that out there. Maybe it starts earlier, but let's give it a starting point in time. The adolescent who is in school is starting to learn that, soon or one day they will be out of school and into the world or into university maybe, or some other trade, and then that's their life pathway, so to speak, unfolding. And the adolescent mind, or the brain, is not, as we adults amongst us know, not fully developed, and their thinking tends to be quite simplistic and somewhat concrete relative to adult thinking. So they start to lock in these very powerful ideas about the purpose of their life, the meaning of their life. What am I here for? What does God want me to do? Even bringing in the deities, evoking the deities to add that even extra added layer of spice. God wants me to do this job, or something like that. Or divine energy needs me to do whatever, and so on and so forth. And let's just choose a conventional profession. What's a conventional profession? No, let's not choose a conventional profession. Let's go with something a bit more adolescent. God wants me to be... No, I'll forget that model about God wanting. I want to be a professional athlete. I want to be a football player, a basketball, baseball, surfer, and so on. The big ones, tennis, golf, the big paying, high prestige. Let's go with tennis. I want to be a professional tennis player, and so I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good at tennis. My coach has got high hopes, and I might make it. You come to be thinking about yourself as that. I'm going to be this professional. It's my path, my destiny, etc., etc. I think you understand what I'm saying. And what happens if I now injure myself in such a way that I can't be that? Or what if I'm just not good enough, frankly? I'm very good, but I'm not professional grade. Or what if I just don't have the startup capital? It's very expensive to kickstart a career in professional sport. Of course, the money rolls in once you start winning, but until that point, it can be very costly, especially with no other income. So there I am now, watching my dreams and my ambitions float away. You see where the suffering is going to start kicking in? My purpose, I cannot live my purpose, my ambition. Now we can extrapolate this example onto any, not even career, but any imagined model of my life. Like, what if it's to be a humanitarian or a spiritual counselor? What if it's to be a healer? Let's go with the more esoteric-y stuff. Like, what if it's to be this sort of wise person? I'm going to be a counselor. I'm going to give advice and offer people help. But what if I'm just crap at that? Like, what if I'm just rubbish? What if I'm not even very clever and can't really give good advice? What if I want to be a healer, but I don't really have the knack, can't really channel the healing energy or whatever you want to call it? What if I imagine myself to be this sort of kind, nice person, but I'm a bit bitter, I'm a bit annoying, people don't warm to me very easily. What if I want to just have a family, just be a so-called regular person with a family, and I can't find a partner, or I have a partner but we can't conceive a child for some reason, or we had a child but we lost our child, something big and weighty like that. Those events are not random to the mind. The mind will frame them. This is a loss. This is a gain. I'm winning or I'm losing. And so now you can see this oscillating effect of gain and loss through whatever endeavor you've set up cognitively or fantastically in your mind for the seeker, for the apparent individual. Now, the question arises naturally, of course, if there is liberation, you might say, does that all go away? Because I really, really hope it does, because that's why I'm going to try and get enlightened. The strange and perplexing answer is no. It does not go away at all. It continues on. It rolls on. But interestingly, and now this is not a rule, but interestingly, the charge comes out of the whole thing a bit. When there is no one there to claim ownership, you could say, or be the central focal point of this oscillation, the oscillation continues. And you could say that the body and the brain and the thoughts, etc., fall into a more natural, this is getting a little bit conceptual, but fall into a natural functioning where this body and this brain are not you. They are just like another part of the world. The tree, the monkey, the insect, the clouds, the stuff. So it comes out of this central fantasy, this life that is mine, which is centralized, you might say, when there is the collapse of the apparent self, there is a sense of decentralization. This body and brain and this creature, forest creature as I like to call it, just takes its place in a more along with everything else in the world, rather than the specialness. So that sense of specialness tends to fall away because it's recognized that there isn't anything special about it. There's no, you get to that paradox, either everything is special or nothing is. Everything is special or nothing is. And I prefer to lean on the nothing is side of it, just in this dialogue at least. Because if I say everything is special, then the mind will sticky hook onto that and try and see that everything is special and make a whole story about it. It's easier just to see that nothing is. That sounds extremely disappointing though. Kind of like, oh, really? Nothing? But anyway, I'm leaning on that one, leaning on that side of the fence. So the suffering can continue because the body-mind organism will do all that stuff that I said earlier. It will gauge itself with respect to purpose and meaning and goals and win and loss, gain and loss, am I there, am I not there, etc. But the charge seems to fall out of it because that central specialness kind of goes away. It was never there, it was just imagined, but that imagining falls away. It tends to fall away. So that's a real puzzle for the apparent seeker. They were hoping desperately to get out of suffering. And in a way they do, you could say, because they're not there anymore, obviously. Now, when I say anymore, that's a bit misleading. They never were there. But when that self-energy, that centralizing energy, vanishes, what do you call it? Explodes, disappears, dissolves. The body, let's say, just takes a more natural functioning. The body-brain entity takes a more natural functioning in the appearance, but alongside everything else, without that extra added specialness. Now, it sounds very, very unsexy to the mind. Very unsexy. Losing the specialness just sounds so, I don't know, sounds so awful to the mind who just wants some specialness. I mean, why not? So there's the answer in shorthand. Pain and suffering are linked. They're linked to the fantasies and daydreams and imaginings of what I want my life to be like. Liberation is not a cure for that. Pain and suffering continue after, you might say, after liberation, but for no one. So the specialness even of the suffering and the pain goes away. It's more like, so what? And pain and suffering, so what? That's kind of more like that, you could say. So please don't turn that into a process, begging the mind, listening. That's not a process, it's just a description. Anyway, I feel like I'm entering into the waffle zone of this brief dialogue because, dear listener, I'm really hungry and I need some breakfast and I need a coffee and I want. Thanks for listening. Questions and comments, as usual, are welcome.